Well, hi everybody. Joe Chaffee and Joe Rayo on a Sunday morning. Joe and Joe Weather Show, 11 o'clock Eastern Time. And Hanna went inland last night. I have to tell you, Joe, if Hanna had a little more time
Yeah,
and was a little bit further west, so it took longer to move inland. I think it would have become a major. It was actually starting to deepen again. It dropped down to 977 millibars, and then it stopped for a few hours, which sometimes they do that after they have um, a drop in the pressure, and then it started dropping again, and I think it got down to 973 or 972 before it finally leveled off and moved inland. But in terms of the structure, in terms of what it looked like on the radar and on the satellite, it it needed a little more time and a little more water, and it would have been a major hurricane.
yeah. I alluded to that yesterday, Joe. I said that wouldn't be surprised if it got up to a category or a Cat 2 before making landfall. And I agree 100%. If it had been out there for a little while longer, it would have indeed been bolstered up to a major hurricane status. It was enough, though, for them down in South Texas to deal with what they did have to deal with. And before we went on this morning, I said to you that Hannah, took everything away from Douglas. It seems. I said, we have two United States, two states of the Union that are being affected by a major hurricane or at least a major tropical system. And everybody was talking about Hannah this, Hannah that, Hannah. And I said,
Yes.
and we, whatever happened to Douglas?
Douglas
But
this.
Douglas is still out there, and Douglas now takes aim at another of our 50 states, the 50th state of the Union, Hawaii, today.
100-mile-an-hour winds, gust a little over 100 miles an hour, by the way, with Hanna on Padre Island. And I just very quickly, since it is now well in, I just want to show everybody what's going on. I saved the loop from last night when the eye was moving inland. I just really was so well defined on the Doppler radar. Very, very impressive indeed. And also, notice it was more on the south side than on the north side of the storm. The south side really took the hardest hit with this. And I think when you look at the fact that the storm was tilted in a northeast southwest direction, it kind of made sense. And its impact when it interacts with the orientation of the shoreline, you wound up with a rather formidable system that moved inland. And now, when we take a look at the latest radar, you can see what's happening. There's actually some bands and some squalls that are occurring north of Corpus Christi toward Victoria. We even have a working tornado warning right at the moment. This is 11:05 Eastern Time if you're watching this on a replay later today. So just make sure you go to weather.gov for all the latest weather information. And in the solid bands to the south, well south of Corpus Christi, down closer to Brownsville and McAllen, you've got one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Looks like seven flash flood warnings and a tornado warning that just went up for one of the counties north of McAllen. So southernmost Texas really taking the brunt of this as far as the hit is concerned. Now, Joe is talking about, we mentioned Hurricane Douglas. So let's take a look at Hurricane Douglas, and we'll start with the satellite loop. And this is now, remember, it's still nighttime there, getting closer to sunrise. I think
They're 6 hours behind
they're
us
six
during
hours or so. This
sunset.
on the satellite loop. It hasn't gotten over the to the dayside picture. I'm sorry, it's a Sunday morning. I already walked 4.5 miles uh, and took one shower, so I'm a little bit slow on the uptake today. But there it is. It's still fairly well defined. It certainly is weaker than what it was. But one of the things you'll notice is that it is the center of this is actually on the southern end of that deep convection. So there really isn't much happening at the moment in terms of what's up on the radar. Taking a look at, I've got the Honolulu. No, this is actually from the Big Island, the radar from the Big Island. And there are just a couple of bands of showers coming inland, but really the main core is just now becoming visible on this radar view. And we'll go to one of the adjacent radars. So we'll swing over to Maui. Actually, this is the Molokai radar, and you see some bands of showers, light showers that are moving west southwestward across the island of Maui, Molokai, and Oahu. And then again on the northeastern fringe in the upper right, you can see the main core is just coming visible. So the the way this storm is structured, it might suggest that unless the system tracks directly over one of these islands, that the core of the storm could wind up being just to the north. But I don't want to speculate over a handful of miles. It becomes a very difficult proposition, and I'm not out there, and I'm not a forecast expert for the climate of Hawaii, so we'll leave that up to the uh, forecasters out at the National Weather Service in Hawaii, and that is also the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, by the way.
It's interesting, Joe, what you just mentioned, because I believe that in Miami, the National Weather Service Forecast Office is completely separate from the National Hurricane Center.
Yes, it is.
They are two separate entities, and yet in the Central Pacific Hurricane Center is also the National Weather Service Forecast Office for Honolulu. So you've got two different divisions in one spot, and I've been to the weather office in Honolulu, a very nice facility. Although that was back in 1991, they obviously must have changed somewhat since that time. But it's interesting to me that they're being asked to do double yeoman duty now, taking on not just their regular forecasts, but also taking on the responsibility of tracking a tropical cyclone in this particular case as well.
I have, by the way, a URL that I put up on the chat board this morning, and also up in Discord. I'm gonna share it again. The chairman, Scott Briller, sent this to me. It's a very, very good place to go with regards to getting kind of a little bit of a primer when it comes to tropical storms and hurricanes, and it could answer some questions that you might have that you might forget to ask us, or in the process of learning about this sort of stuff, you naturally come up with some questions. So I just put up a link again on the chat board for that. We have Flying Hawaiian on the chat board, by the way, Joe. I wonder if Flying Hawaiian can tell us a little bit about what's going on weather-wise out on the Hawaiian Islands at the moment.
I'm impressed. Especially since it's 4:11 in the morning, where Flying Hawaiian happens to be. If he or she happens to be within the Hawaiian Islands. Well, yeah, Flying Hawaiian it says it's pretty calm here, no wind, but it'll soon pick up, I guess, the calm before the storm.
Yeah, and judging from what we saw on the radar and the satellite, that sort of makes sense. So just let's jump along to what the Hurricane Center is doing with this from the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, and then we wanted, by the way, the Miami with respect to Hanna, just to reiterate the fact that we have a number of flash flood warnings up for parts of South Texas. And we'll get to the radar, the wider radar view, and the current radar views again to show you what's going on after we're done with Douglas. But here's the Hurricane Center's forecast where they have. Now, here's the thing, Joe, and I'm a little confused because I'm looking at this is the 5 a.m. Hawaiian Standard Time advisory, which just came out. And it's at 20.7 north, 154.3 west. So it's very, very close to the big island of Hawaii. And they have tropical storm warning. They have the tropical storm warning label for the big island of Hawaii, hurricane warnings for the rest of the islands. Okay. I'm not arguing about whether the fact that they got a tropical storm warning up versus a hurricane. I don't have an issue with that, but I'm just a little confused because I had the and I'll bring this up now. I'll bring back up the Weather Service office from Hawaii, which we were talking about the separations of the two. Maybe I misread it, but let me, because sometimes the colors could be a little bit off. But I'm trying to bring up the Hawaii, but Weather Service office. Okay, all right. This is because they have it. This is one of the things with colors on the Weather Service map. Sometimes they have red, and then they have a slightly lighter shade of red. So that's correct. Okay, I was concerned that they had hurricane warnings up for the Big Island on their forecast office map, but not on their weather.gov map. But that's my mistake. Hurricane warnings are up for Maui, Molokai, Oahu, and the islands going west. But for the Big Island, it is a tropical storm, a tropical storm warning. I'm going to see if I could bring up some current obs. By the way,
If you use the interactive map, Joe, I know that we often show the projected path of the storms, uh, the cone and whatever. Interactive map, which you can actually zoom in and out, and they show the areas of hurricane force winds and gale force winds. And if you look at that interactive map and the track with the cone of uncertainty, you'll see that much of the hurricane force winds are anticipated to stay north of the Big Island, which is probably why the Big Island is not under a hurricane watch or warning. But they still will be grazed, especially over the north part of the island, with probably some gale force winds.
I
So
have
this,
the map up now. I'm bringing it up.
so
Uh,
you could see by that okay, they probably are thinking like, well, the worst of it, the lion's share of the storm's worst winds will probably stay just to the north of the Big Island. Big Island, really, if you've ever studied Hawaiian topography, the Big Island of Hawaii is really nothing more than a gigantic volcanic cone that's sticking up out of the Pacific Ocean. And there are actually two giant volcanoes on that island, ranging upwards to 14,000 feet, Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea. And in fact, on Mauna Kea, they have a major astronomical observatory. That's the Big Island, which kind of stands out from all the other islands. They're a little different than, let's say, Molokai and Maui and Oahu. And Oahu is the island with Honolulu on it. So
well, if you look at the interactive map, you see the track, Joe. The southern, when you look at where the core of the winds are, it does miss the Big Island, but it does hit the other islands, particularly the particularly Honolulu, the Oahu, and it goes. It looks like the hurricane. That's the island that the hurricane should make its closest pass without actually going overland. So it's going to be kind of a rough day. The fact that the hurricane is passing just north of the islands and maybe staying just barely offshore is a good thing. But I also believe that they're probably going to have to sweat out those few miles. But this might be also, Joe, another test and hopefully a successful one for just how good the Hurricane Center forecasts have gotten with regards to forecast tracks. It's really
right.
they really have gotten uh, very good. Even going out more than several days, they've gotten quite good.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm looking here on this interactive map, and they have for Oahu and Honolulu the earliest reasonable arrival time of tropical storm winds, and they have the 2 o'clock time line just reaching the eastern end of Oahu. Most likely time of arrival time of tropical storm winds. They're somewhere between 2 and 8. So probably they're thinking that between 2 and 5 o'clock Hawaiian time is when the winds will start gusting to above tropical storm force winds of 39 miles per hour. And that would correspond to us. That would correspond to something like 8 to 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. So it won't be until later tonight, that we'll begin to hear about Honolulu receiving the storm force winds. And then beyond that, let's see how high the winds are clocked at Honolulu as the storm makes its closest approach to Oahu Island.
There's the interactive map. almost made the mistake of not opening that window up again. So you can take a look here. The straight black line up to the north, showing the forecast track, and you see how, with respect to the islands where the storm will pass, and as Joe just described, the most likely arrival time of tropical storm winds between 2 and 8 p.m. Hawaii time. So ways to go here with regards to deteriorating weather conditions. As Flying Hawaiian on the chat board indicated, things are pretty calm at the moment. Okay, let's head over to the GOES satellite loop back home, and I'll bring up the U.S. loop here. If everybody just gives me one moment, I want to clear my. I'm going to attempt to clear my screen before it freezes up on me, and I may already be too late, Joe. Okay, it's unfrozen. All right, so let me get rid of this. All right, this is not helping me. Come on. I got to get rid of. I have to close a couple of windows. I got so many windows open at the moment that it's just creating a hassle. So just give me a moment here. It's not letting me. Oh, I just love technology sometimes. Let's just come back here full screen. It just seems on a Sunday we always have this issue. Okay, let me get rid of that. Let me close this window. Come on, close.
He'll get it. He'll get it, folks.
By the way, this computer I have is relatively new. But I just get into a habit where I just open up way too many windows, and as a result, it just gets. All right, so let's see if I don't want to just close this tab. Okay, that's good. Close this tab. That's good. Okay, we're coming along here, folks. I'm getting some success here. I think I've closed enough. All right, let's keep your fingers crossed. All right, so let me bring up the wide radar view again. And you see it there. There's your wide radar view. And notice the heavy rains. You can see the core of Hanna there to the in South Texas with the heavy rains and the bands that are still coming in. And Joe, Southeast Louisiana continues to get pounded here with heavy rains. This started yesterday and it's going on again today. It's part of that very broad circulation that Hanna was embedded in, and we're still seeing moisture coming in off the Gulf of Mexico and not really making much progress away from that area, nor is it diminishing. It seems to be getting heavier and heavier as we move along.
Yeah, as I mentioned yesterday, kind of like a training effect for them, and I'm not going to say they're the forgotten state, but not just South Texas, but Louisiana, as we pointed out yesterday, getting pretty well pounded, still getting pretty well pounded by some very significant, if not substantial, rainfall.
Up the East Coast, it is a hot day and a relatively calm day. I don't think we're going to have any thunderstorms to worry about today here, right?
I wouldn't even put up a 10% probability of thunderstorms. I think we're going to stay pretty dry and pretty hot. And what do you think, Joe? Tomorrow will be the crescendo, so to speak, of the heat for this latest heat wave, or
I believe so. And
then some people were like speculating it might even be Tuesday. It might be hotter than Monday, but I think Tuesday we're going to probably see the heat tempered by building clouds and the trend toward the end of the heat with the approaching cold front.
And a little bit more maybe the wind will be a little more southwest than west, and that makes a difference because the west wind is the wind that usually takes temperatures up there. Also, it turns out that for today, people were going from middle to upper 90s, Joe. I'm not so sure. I mean, I certainly could see it out my window. I actually have some cloud cover here that has kept the sun away. And also this morning, it didn't have that, I don't know, it just didn't feel as hot and uncomfortable as I thought it was going to. I mean, it'll still make it up into the low and maybe even a few middle 90s, but I think that Anything higher than that is probably not going to happen today. It might have a better shot at happening tomorrow.
Well, you know what? One place that'll probably hit 100 degrees, I'd even put money down on it, is probably Tom's River.
I was just going to say Tom's River, and they'll hit 32 overnight
Yeah.
in the Pine Barrens. So it got some showers up in Maine, which is not a bad thing, and we have some heavy showers and storms moving across southeastern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, into the upper peninsula of Michigan. And the monsoon in the southwest is not really doing very much at the moment, but then again, you wouldn't expect it to be since it's only 8 a.m. and we'll probably see some showers and storms fire up there later on today. On the watches and warnings map, by the way, across the U.S., we do have some flash flood watches up for parts of the western counties, and then it crosses over into the northeastern counties of New Mexico, and also in a number of counties in Kansas. Where we're seeing flash flood watches. We have, of course, flash flood warnings now over a whole slew of counties, and we also, in South Texas, and also a working tornado watch at the moment in South Texas. Severe thunderstorms, special marine warnings that are up for parts of the coast of southeast Louisiana and southern Louisiana, and we pointed out the heavy rains that are staying there, and also a little bit of action off the South Carolina and Georgia coast. A few places with heat advisories up, and a couple of areas with excessive heat, but nothing in terms of, it's not one of those days, nor does it seem to have been one of those summers where you have 20 or 30 states under heat advisories and excessive heat warnings. Where it's a little bit more typical, although it is very much on the hot side here in the Northeast. And now I can bring the full U.S. satellite view up.
You mentioned about the showers in Maine, and Maine, the Storm Prediction Center actually has Maine under a marginal risk for severe weather for today, but they don't have any thunderstorm predicted for our area, both today and also for tomorrow as well. So it looks like hot and dry will be the two words that best define our weather from now till the end of tomorrow. And then Tuesday, they put us in marginal, and then we will look for the potential for showery, thundery weather, which hopefully will break at least, if not the heat, at least the humidity here for the middle and latter part of this week.
I'm trying to bring up a satellite loop, and these sector views sometimes they there we go. All right, it's trying.
It is trying, isn't it?
Oh my God! Oh, you said a mouthful there, but I got to get rid of it, and I finally did. So now let's go to the GFS. Okay, let's just go to the GFS because I really have lost my patience now. All right, the Hurricane Center is talking about another tropical wave. I would like to bring that picture up. I can try. Should I try?
Why not?
All right, let's
Well,
try.
the reason why you're having such trouble is it's still way out. You have to invest time in seeing this next tropical wave.
No. It's everything getting hung up. I got too many things, too many windows open,
Well, next time
including.
you just have to get Anderson windows, Joe. They're a lot easier
Yeah,
to use.
I understand completely. Correct. All right. It's like pulling teeth today. There are some days where it's really like I'd rather have my teeth pulled. Okay. One more time. Let's try this.
Everybody.
Yay! Now let's try to loop it. All right, so if you look out on the lower right, folks, you can see actually there were two tropical waves. One that's moving off the African coast, and then there's one that's the one that's further to the west. There's actually a broad low that has developed there, and it is moving slowly westward. This, in a way, has. If you think back to last week before Gonzalo formed, we saw a nice looking tropical wave and swirl out there in its development stages. This one actually looks a little bit bigger. But what we don't have at the moment is a solid concentration of convection in what would be a circulation center. But it certainly does appear organized enough that the Hurricane Center is talking about a 60% chance of developing in the next 48 hours and a 90% chance of developing in the next 5 days. And that will now bring us to what is going to happen. Now, I want to go back, Joe, to I got to go back to yesterday afternoon's 18Z GFS. I don't know if you saw this, but
I didn't
it's
see the 18
oh, you
CZ.
have I have to show we have to look at this. So I've got the wide Atlantic view, and I think we're still at this point where most of the models are developing something out of this. As we back it up, but you can see that wave that's in the central tropical Atlantic. This is for tomorrow morning, where there's 1,007 low, 1,005 low during the overnight. So if there's a concentrated area of convection that develops, you may very well see this be upgraded to a tropical depression tomorrow morning. But it does roll along on the GFS, goes north of the Leeward Islands, and I got such a kick out of this because we know in the wintertime when the snow lovers get frustrated with the things that look like they're coming up the coast and then they don't. But this one was funny because if you watch this, it brings it up to about the North Carolina coast, and then it starts to turn northward. It actually brings it inland in North Carolina. And we're not forecasting this. I'm just illustrating the silliness of the models here. But watch what happens at this point. Here we are, 12Z Wednesday, August 5th. At this point, it goes straight east, okay? And then when it gets out to roughly about, I don't know, 64, 65 west or so, it turns north and goes into Nova Scotia. It completely bypasses the area from Delaware to Maine. It goes out and goes up at a sharp right angle, too. I love that. But it's one of those things where the weather freaks when they look at the weather models and they get all upset because can you believe that what it did? Well, of course it did that because it's in the long range and there's a lot of variability in what's going on. And here's what we're looking at, folks. It's a really we look at these surfaces and it's really about the upper air. It's always about the upper air. And I rolled this back to tomorrow morning where we are seeing the beginnings of change. There is a very nice looking upper low that is dropping down out of central Canada, north of Minnesota. You can see it there. There's also an upper low along the coast of Labrador. So as a result, you've got this, we're on the edge of this northwest flow. You have the upper high that is off the southeast coast. It extends back into the southwest U.S. So that puts us, right on the edge, which is oftentimes where you get the hottest temperatures, right on that northern uh, edge of that upper high that sits right over the northern mid-Atlantic states. So going forward this week, of course, the big upper low drops into southeastern Canada. Now this should bring some humidity relief. In the meantime, out in the Atlantic, you've got this east-west high, and here is your next tropical system, and also here is the one behind it, and they're moving along underneath that upper ridge. So if nothing were to change here, you would take this and probably track it somewhere where it makes a turn and then moves out to the northeast. Again, that's assuming that nothing changes in the upper air over the course of the 4 or 5 days that follows. But of course, that's not how the world works, and things do change. The upper high does hold to a large extent. The trough drops through the east. We get a break from the heat and humidity, but it's right back through here. There's a short wave that drops down into the Tennessee Valley. And this is where you look to see what exactly is going to happen with this. If we wind up with a surviving system that goes north of the islands, it is going to respond to this flow to an extent and to that short wave. And what we're going to have to figure out is, well, what is the magnitude and depth of that trough? At least going into next weekend, you've got this alleyway, but also notice you've got mainly westerly winds up from New Jersey northward. So that would suggest that this probably would have a tough time making it up the East Coast if that's correct. But it's a little dicey. And in the meantime, you've got this upper low that drops down into the middle and lower Mississippi Valley. Your tropical system reacts to that by turning northward. And then, of course, here's your northwest flow up in New England, so then that's why it kicks it out. My point is that in all of that mess that I just described, the point of all of this is that you're going to see model runs do all sorts of things in the next 4 or 5 days. I would strongly urge to not take any one model as some form of gospel, because that's just not going to work. And there's a lot of variability here going ahead, Joe. But we do know that there are players on board, and I think that we're going to have to watch those players and see where these troughs wind up dropping in, because that will ultimately determine where this thing will go.
And I could remember. I think I have a fairly good memory, and there's one of the things I remember the most is the first week of August in terms of tropical activity. I remember that because my birthday is coming up next Sunday, Joe, August the 2nd. And
Oh,
so I have this tendency of remembering various types of weather patterns that take shape or take form right around the time of my birthday. The only time in all the years that I had been looking at weather patterns relative to my birthday, the only system that I could remember that stood out was Hurricane Bell, which came along and hit the tri-state area a week after my birthday. I think it was on August the
August
9th,
8th or 9th, yeah.
8th, 9th in 1976.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be interesting. This would be the first time since '76 that I could remember some sort of a tropical threat on the map right around the time of my natal day. And it'll be interesting to see what we're going to be talking about at this time next week in terms of this system coming in from the eastern Atlantic now.
I had to wait. My birthday is in January, on the 27th of January,
I don't
and
think you ever had a tropical system to worry
no,
about,
but
did
I
you?
had to wait years. I had to wait till I was into my 40s before I first saw. I actually saw a of substantial accumulating snow on my birthday.
Wow.
There were a couple along the way where I maybe had an inch or some flurries, but most years nothing. And a whole slew of years where it was temperatures were in the 50s on my birthday. I can remember those in the 90s. But in the 2000s, I finally got a bunch of. I had several 1 foot plus snowstorms on my birthday,
Hmm.
and including one that I don't remember which year it was, but I remember it was one of those where you go to bed at night with just a little bit of snow on the ground. You know it's coming, and then you wake up the next morning and there was a foot on the ground. That was really kind of cool. All right, but here I want to bring up the last GFS run today, which is the 6Z, because it's too early. The 12Z run just started now. To see what it did, and of course you see that short wave, that upper low that drops down into eastern Canada again. That brings relief. Now, as far as this next tropical system is concerned, the other question you have to answer here is the strength of this ridge. If it's too strong, it's going to wind up deflecting this more to the west and moving it into the Caribbean, and that's something that the European last night uh, did. If the ridge has a little bit of a weakness to you'll see this try to move north of the islands, and this is what the model run did last night. Again, the same idea. You have an upper high that is sitting offshore. Let me clean up this screen. Here's your upper high, like that. And here's the nose of another little upper high from the Gulf of Mexico. So it finds itself into no man's land. And this is the map for next Saturday. Here's a nice shortwave trough with an upper low in Illinois. And here's your northern part of the jet stream in northern New England. So it's complicated here, folks. It's not simple because of all the different systems that are running around. On last night's run, it reacts to that short wave, again, pulling it toward the North Carolina coast, but keeps it offshore, and then kicks it out to the northeast, passing south of Nova Scotia, and moves it over to Newfoundland. So you see what happens here. Every run is going to key in on a slight change in the position and strength of any one of those players out there, be it the upper ridge, be it the shortwave trough that's in the Ohio Valley, be it the jet and upper low that's moving through southeastern Canada, or the tropical system itself and how it responds to that upper high. So we're just going to sit back and watch this play out over the next several days. Ultimately, you got to get the tropical system to form first, and that hasn't happened yet. So first things first.
And
You got
by the way, Bell, I believe, was in a very similar situation that we had a trough coming in from the west and a big ridge of high pressure out over the Atlantic Ocean,
you had a
and there
good
was and
southerly
there
fl- you had a good
was a
southerly
little
flow
corridor
with
that
that.
just yeah, the corridor just like was just wide enough for Bell to just come right up along the eastern seaboard and hit central Long Island. So
Yeah, but a lot of ways to go to go, and of course we're going to be certainly on top of this as we move through this week to see how it evolves. But here's the GFS surface, by the way. There's going to be quite a bit of rain continuing in South Texas and along the Gulf Coast. Southeast Louisiana is still in that there's an axis there that runs northeast southwest coming out of Hanna that is bringing in that Gulf moisture and pounding them with rain. It doesn't really improve until about Wednesday or so. And the heavy rain's also continuing for South Texas into Tuesday and early Wednesday. The rest of us, of course, we're going to watch for some showers and thunderstorms here on Tuesday with a cold front coming by. I'm not quite sure yet whether we're going to have maybe a marginal risk for severe weather with this front. I think it's certainly possible
they had that for us, the
for
marginal risk
Tuesday. All
today.
right, I'll bring
Yeah.
up SPC in a minute. Uh, and then later on in the week, with a frontal boundary that's going to lie down into the southeastern part of the United States, that at least gives us a bit of a break in the humidity. And then here comes whatever it is next weekend that comes on the scene east of the Bahamas on the GFS, and there you go, and it just kind of stays offshore. Again, you saw what the upper air uh, did with this, and that's what we'll focus on. And let's bring up SPC. Bring up the SPC map. There's your marginal risk in northern Maine and also through parts of the Great Lakes and upper Mississippi Valley and down in Texas. That working tornado watch at 11:40 Eastern time, folks. Again, remember, go to weather.gov if you're watching this on a replay. Monday, we've got marginal risk Ohio, Northwest PA, Western New York, back through parts of Indiana. Tuesday, we're looking at marginal risk for severe weather, Northeast Virginia, all the way up into northern New England. So, yeah, so that makes total sense with what we're seeing.
Right. And who's to say that when we get to Tuesday and after they maybe make more stringent calculations in terms of the Cape, which I'm sure with the heat will probably be in excess of 2,000. The higher the number, the more likely sometimes that you see severe weather. Who's to say that that marginal zone will have embedded within it maybe a slight risk? And who is to say even with the front arriving just at the right time of the day relative to, let's say, the coastal plain, maybe even something more than just a slight risk for later Tuesday and Tuesday night. So in order to break a long-standing stretch of humidity and heat, and this certainly in terms of humidity has been long-standing, and the heat, short term, in order to break something like that, you need a good swath of severe weather, and we may just see that or get that later Tuesday and Tuesday night, and hopefully, Joe, as you just alluded to, maybe at least a significant drop in the humidity values, the dew points by mid and late week, and we certainly could use that.
All right, so let's do a little Brillo Jeopardy and then wrap it up for this Sunday. Okay, you
Yep,
ready?
yep.
So, who was the only main cast member who was in MASH from start to finish?
It would have to be Alan Alda, and if along with Alan Alda, I believe Loretta Swit.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Let me go. I read the question wrong.
Oh,
Who was the only main cast member who was in the MASH TV series and the movie?
that would be Gary Berghoff,
Okay,
who played Radar.
right.
Yeah.
Now, second question. Russia and China both they border how many countries? Both borders, Russia and China. How many countries?
Oh, good Lord, they're big countries. China, maybe not. I'll say something like like 4 for China and 12 for Russia.
That's pretty cool. 16. The answer is 14. So that was a good guess.
Uh-huh.
And the
Good.
largest cave system in the world is located in what state?
Would it be Arkansas?
No, not too, not that far away,
Okay.
relatively speaking.
Uh, well, I wouldn't. I'll say Tennessee,
One state north, Kentucky.
Kentucky.
And by the
I have,
way, if you ever want to see, I don't know if you've ever, when you go down 81 in Virginia, near Roanoke, there is a park there, and I forgot the name of the park, but you can just Google the Natural Bridge, okay, because that's what it's called, the
right.
Natural Bridge, and it's outside of Roanoke, and it's one of the most. I have to tell you, it was one of the most spectacular things I've ever seen. It is. It's a bridge where there's a road that goes over it. That's on it. But the bridge itself was carved out of rock by a river, and you're down at the bottom, and you're like several hundred feet down, and the bridge is up there several hundred feet up. It is quite a sight to see. But if you Google the Natural Bridge, it's in Virginia, and if you're ever down there, you got to stop this park and take a look at it. And if you go on my Facebook page, I got pictures up there somewhere. I just don't have time to pull them up now. Uh,
The engineers have said it's safe for somebody to travel over
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
natural bridge.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. You take a look at it. Google it and take a look at it. There's a lot of caves and caverns in Virginia, also in the Shenandoah Valley,
right.
that are big tourist attractions. I've never been, but on my drives down there, I see the sign, so I know that one of these trips down. When I head down to Georgia, and maybe next time I'll stop in Virginia for a day or two because I really would like to see that. So, and I'm sure I will give it a glowing recommendation
Yeah.
after seeing it. But it's there's great stuff to look at, and you don't have to really go that far away once this pandemic is over anyway, uh,
Right.
to really see some beautiful things in nature. And
Who
by the
knows?
way,
Maybe one day they'll end the CBS, the weekly CBS show Sunday morning. They always end with a moment of nature, and maybe one day down the road they'll actually have a moment of nature from this particular site that you're talking about right now.
by the way, this whole week on BBC on the BBC channel, all of this past week and until 10 o'clock this morning was non-stop 24/7 David Attenborough and Planet Earth nature shows every hour of every day for the last 7 days, and
Mm.
I watched a large portion of those. I sat and binge watched them, and I, they're very, very relaxing to watch. They're beautifully edited. The music that they put behind. All right, folks. Joe, I'm sorry. We took an internet hit. Uh,
Yes, I just
j-
said,
j-
oh, we're frozen.
yeah. By the way, we had two super chat hits. I am not able to see who they were. I don't know if you can see them on your end.
I did see them. One of them is from the chairman himself, and the other was from Brendan Doherty.
Thank
Not
you
Doherty.
both for hitting Super Chat on this Sunday. Sorry for that internet hit. I was wondering when it was going to come, and it did. And by the way, I have a few people have suggested, and I'm well aware. I have extenders here. Okay, so that's not. This is the issue of what goes on up where I am.
And
Uh,
I missed. Sorry about that. I also missed Leon Probitsky. Also,
oh, okay, great.
I'm
So
going to write
Leon,
the.
Scott, and Brandon, thank you all three for hitting super chat. But this has to do with the internet service that I'm on, and unfortunately, I don't have any other options here because they have an absolute monopoly on the town that I live in, and they're not allowed to bring any other cable. They're not allowed to bring any other competitor. It's some kind of exclusive deal that was signed 40 years ago by people that you and I both know. So we'll just leave that there. So I apologize for that hit. This will be, by the way, available on a podcast. It'll be up in about an hour. So if you missed any of it, or you're tuning late, or you want to just put it on your listen to it on your phone while you're laying out at the beach, it'll be up in the podcast, and you can find it on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and a few other podcast sites. And I think we're also on iTunes somewhere. So
Do you want to hold off on your question till tomorrow, or you want them right now?
you know what? Go ahead. Let's just go real quick.
All right. What was the highest and lowest temperature ever in August at Central Park?
I'll say 104 for the high and 46 for the low.
You hit it right on the nose with the high. The lowest was 50. The highest was indeed 104. How many Grammy? Now, what does this have to do with the weather, Scott? How many Grammys?
That's all right.
How many Grammys has Elvis Presley won?
I'm not a music person, so this is a subject matter that I know very little about with regards to the Grammys. So either he has a lot or he doesn't have many. I'll lean to the fact that he probably doesn't have many.
He had won only 3.
Yeah, that's what I figured, that he didn't have a lot.
I'm not sure whether or not that was before or after he decided to shoot his TV screen when he saw something on TV he didn't like. And the last question is, Central Park has hit 100 the most times in 1953 and again in 1966. How many times for each of those years?
I'll say 3 or 4, so I'll go with 4.
And you were right, 4.
Whoa, good, wow. I'm on a streak there.
Yes.
All right, so we'll see you tomorrow at the regular time, 7 o'clock Eastern.
I will be here.
Although I'm really tempted to take a day off.
Well, Joe, we've worked now 7 straight days.
Yeah, so. You know what? Maybe let's see what happens tomorrow, folks, and we may just take the night off if there's not much going on. If the tropics rev up, then we'll jump on. But if not, we'll take a break. But we'll let you know tomorrow. All right. Hopefully. Have a great Sunday, everybody. Enjoy your afternoon, and thanks.